A very good and pleasant morning to all of you. In continuation to what we were discussing about the Indian writers in English and their contribution in Indian English writing, I'm here to discuss R.K.Narayan with you. First of all, we will be discussing his biographical details and then his writing career. At the end of this lecture, we will be discussing R.K.Narayan as father of regional novels and as a campus novelist. So first of all, let us discuss R.K.Narayan's biographical details. R.K. Narayan, that is Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Ayyar Narayanaswamy, was born in 1906 in Madras Presidency and he died in 2001 in Chennai. He won Sahitya Academy Award in 1960 for his one of the significant works, that is The Guide. He contributed in an article entitled The Fiction Writer in India in Atlantic Monthly Supplement. We can call him a polyglot since his mother tongue was Tamil and he settled down in Mysore where he used Kannada and he wrote in English. He finished his education in Cambridge and London and he chose journalism as his career. R.K. Narayan is considered to be one of the famous writers among the trio brothers, that is Mulkraj Anand, Raja Rao and R.K. Narayan himself. These three writers are considered to be the three pillars of pre-independence novels in India. Now we will be discussing R.K. Narayan's famous novels, and in this series we will be taking up Swami and Friends as first. Swami and Friends was published in 1935, and this novel, I should rather call it a novelette, is a delightful account of a schoolboy, Swaminathan, who was known as Swami. Graham Greene, one of the famous English writer, once said about this novel that it is a classical schoolboy story of a child, written with complete objectivity, with a humor strange for a fiction, closer to Chekhov than to any other English writer, with the same underlying sense of beauty and sadness. Swami and Friends is a story of Swami and his other friends, that is Somu, Mani, Samuel, and Rajan. Swami is a young boy and he is a school going boy who is teased by his friends who call him as Rajan's tail. Rajan is his classmate and he was son of Malgudi, that is the fictional town in which the whole story is set. So, police superintendent. So, a quarrel follows in which the headmaster of the school has to intervene. And there occurs a non-violent movement in Malgudi. So, in a way, Swami and Friends also gives a glimpse of the freedom fighting and the struggles that people were undergoing and the challenges that people had at the time. So Swami and his friends lead a crowd to the board high school and they interfere with the work rudely. Swami has to join the board high school. Later on, we come to know that a cricket 11 team is formed as MCC by Rajan. And Swami was also invited by them to practice. But the headmaster was very angry with him for not attending his last class. So he punishes Swami. Swami runs away from Malgudi, but after 2 days he was found by people and he was brought back to his father. The whole story ends when we get to know that Rajan's father, who was the DSP of that area, gets transferred to another village. And Swami and Mangi go to station and they say goodbye to Rajan. So, Swami and Friends is a story about this school going boy, Swami, and what exactly happens in his life. The second work, that is The Bachelor of Arts, was published in 1937. This novel deals with the college life, and that is why, in many ways, we can call this as a campus novel. The hero is Chandran, who completed his graduation, and later on he falls in love with Malathi. But this relationship was not accepted by his family because Their horoscopes do not match. That is why Chandran was so disappointed that he renounces the world and he becomes sannyasi. But later on, he rejoins his domestic life and he succumbs to his family or to the wills of his family and he marries Sushila. And at the end of this novel, we come to know that he becomes the chief agent of the Daily Messenger. And ultimately, he accepts what exactly happens in his life. The third work of R.K.Narayan is The English Teacher, which was published in 1945. This is the third novel which deals with school and college life of India. The leading character is Krishnan, who is an English teacher, and he is against the the then system of education, and he believed that the system of education or the education system of that time was making people morons, particularly cultural morons. So he believed in freedom of soul and independence of mind. The main part of this novel centers around the love between Krishnan and his wife Sushila, who died due to typhoid. And later on, we come to know that Krishnan dedicates his life in bringing up his daughter Leela. So, the reviewers and the critics normally assume that there are some autobiographical elements in this novel, since R.K. Narayan dedicated this work to his wife Rajan. So we can say that Swami and Friends, The Bachelor of Arts, and The English Teacher, these three works are considered to be the trilogy of Malgudi on Sarayu. The next work in the series is Dark Room, which was published in 1938. I can see some feministic aspect in this story, in this novel, since this central character of this novel is Savitri, who is very submissive and neglected wife of Ramani. And we get to know that Ramani had a very torrid affair with his newly appointed employee. And when Savitri comes to know about this, she threatens Ramani either to stop this love affair or she will leave the home. But Ramani doesn't pay any attention to Savitri's threat. And Savitri tries unsuccessfully to commit suicide. Even she takes up a caretaker's job in a temple. But at the end of this novel, we come to know that Savitri decides to go back to home and she lives with this burden that her husband is having an affair with somebody else. After The Dark Room, R.K. Narayan published his fifth novel, that is The Financial Expert, which was published in 1952. This novel deals with the rise and fall of Margaya, who is known as a financial wizard. The name Margaya means one who shows the path. So, Margaya is a man of many hopes. He gives advice to people under a banyan tree. And in due course of time, because of his advices and because of his customers, he becomes very rich. But there was a time in his life when he comes to know that his son becomes spoiled and his son denies to sit under the banyan tree to continue his job. And Margaya, in his old age, himself decides to sit under the banyan tree and he starts his life from scratch. So, this novel, The Financial Expert, can be studied through psychological or psychoanalytical perspective as well. The next work is Mr. Sampat, the printer of Malgudi, which was published in 1949. This novel was adopted into the film under the production of famous Gemini Studios banner. Mr. Sampat is the leading character in this novel. He is the owner of the Truth Printing Works and he prints the weekly of Mr. Srinivasa. This weekly is called as the Banner, and the workers of this weekly go on strike one day, and Mr. Sampat persuades Srinivas to write a film story for his new venture. But later on, we come to know that Sampat falls in love with the heroine of the film, Shanti. Besides, there is another boy in this novel named Ravi, who is an artist, and he also falls in love with Shanti. Sampath takes Shanti and he starts living with Shanti in a bungalow at Mempi Hills. But later on, they separate after uh, uh, after some hot discussions between them. And Shanti returns to Madras. And at the end, Sampath goes back to Malgudi, but now he's afraid of his creditors and he doesn't want to stay in Malgudi now. So, this story is again a very significant story because uh, all his novels, which we have discussed recently, tell us the then India, the people, their temperament, the customs, etc. Now we are going to discuss a very significant work of R.K.Narayan, which won Sahitya Academy Award. That is The Guide. The Guide was published in 1956, and the whole story of Guide can be divided into three phases. The leading character in this novel is Raju, who is a tourist, who is a tour guide, and the first phase of this novel tells us about Raju as a railway guide. And later, we come to know that there is a female named Rosie and her husband Marco who come to Malgudi, and we read the second phase of this novel where Raju is an impresario because he cheats Rosie. And at the end, or the last phase of this novel, is depicting Raju as a pseudo saint. So, the whole story of the guide is a transformation of Raju from a local tour guide to a pseudo saint. In 1960, as I have already told you, in 1960, the guide won Sahitya Academy Award, which is considered to be one of the prestigious awards in India. After the guide, uh, R.K. Narayan published another work which I have not mentioned in this slide, that is The Man-Eater of Malgudi, which was published in 1962. The Man-Eater of Malgudi was a retelling of an ancient Hindu fable of Bhasmasura, the demon, in the modern context. The whole story, that is the Man-Eater of Malgudi, is about the modern Bhasmasura, that is Vasu, who was a taxidermist. He was a very cruel and fearless bully who wants to kill the temple elephant but accidentally kills himself by slapping at the mosquito buzzing near his overhead. His friend Natraj, who was a printer, is very timid and ineffectual angel, but he is presented as a very excellent foil. The significance of Vasu's end is described by Shastri, who is another character who was actually an aide to Natraj in his printing machine, printing shop. And the whole story means when you will read this story, The Man-Eater of Malgudi, you are going to definitely like it. After the Man-Eater of Malgudi, R.K. Narayan published Waiting for Mahatama, which was published in 1955. And this story is based on Gandhian freedom struggle. But underneath this, there is a controversial love story about Sri Ram and Bharati. Sri Ram is a typical weak-willed Narayan's character, and Bharati is a Congress volunteer. And at the end, we come to know that Sri Ram and Bharati are engaged. But Waiting for Mahatma tells us the tragedy of India's partition in 1947, and it also tells us about Gandhi's death in 1948. So, as far as freedom struggle movement is concerned, Waiting of Mahatma is worth reading novel. The 11th work of R.K.Narayan is The Vendor of Sweets, which was published in 1967. And if you go to YouTube and surf for Malgudi Days series, you will find this beautiful story, The Vendor of Sweets, and you are definitely going to enjoy this. So the vendor of sweets has also the Gandhian motive. The leading character is Jagan, who was a sweet vendor, and he was a Gandhian. He followed Gandhi's ideas and teachings. And one day, Jagan finds that his only son, Mali, comes back from USA, and he's not alone now. Rather, he is with a girl, and Jagan is quite disappointed with this, and he plans. Mali plans to devise a novel writing machine, and Jagan cannot stand to it because he was frustrated and he was quite disturbed. And that is why, at the end of the story, Jagan renounces the world. The next work after The Vendor of Sweets is The Painter of Signs, which was published in 1976. And this story is about a character named Raman, who is a leading character in this novel. And he's a sign painter, and he loves a girl named Daisy, who works in a family planning center. And both reciprocate their love to each other, but Raman's aunt doesn't accept this relation. And later on, Daisy was quite dissatisfied with this reaction. That is why she leaves Raman. And The Painter of Signs is a novel where you get the mention of the story of King Shantanu and Ganga. Now we will be discussing the short stories of R.K. Narayan. Although the video is quite long now, so I will be just telling you the titles of the short stories of R.K. Narayan. And to get a detailed overview of these stories, you may refer to the series named Malgudi Days on YouTube. So, among the short stories of R.K. Narayan, Cyclone and Other Stories, Dodo and Other Stories, Malgudi Days, An Astrologer's Day and Other Stories, Lovely Road and Other Stories, Gods, Demons and Other Stories, and A Horse and Two Goats are famous collections of stories. Now, we will be discussing R.K. Narayan as father of regional novels. So first of all, we need to understand what do we mean by regional novels. Actually, regional novels are novels which are set in a particular region or a particular place, and these novels portray the social customs, behavior, language, culture, historical background, dialect of that particular region, and where the whole story is set. So in these regional novels, the leading characters are affected by the set social customs, behaviors, etc. of that particular region. And these regional novels are actually they showcase the local colors, even the temperaments, challenges, difficulties of the characters. And this is not a very short description. Rather, these things are described in a very detailed way. So you have the detailings of a particular region in which the whole story is set in. Even the characters are stick to that particular place or setting. Uh, the famous regional writers in English literature are Thomas Hardy and Faulkner. When we read Thomas Hardy, we will find that almost all his works are based or set in Wessex, and Wessex is a fictional place. And Faulkner's novels are based or set in Yoknapatawa County. And in the same way, we have R.K.Narayan's novels, which are set in Malgudi village or Malgudi town, so which is a fictional town, and all the novels which we have discussed in this novel are set in Malgudi. Now we will be discussing campus novel. So campus novels are novels where main actions are set in and around the campus of a college or a university. Even the campus novels deal with the relationship of the faculty members, the administration of that particular college or university, and the students. Among the famous campus novelists, we have Kingsley Amis, whose famous work is Lucky Jim. And another characteristic of campus novel is that they are very realistic and have some imaginary elements as well. And in campus novels, we witness the very complex relationship that take place in college. So R.K. Narayan's first three works, which we discussed in this video, are can be called as campus novels since they are set in either school or colleges. So this is all for today. I will be sharing the Google form, which is actually a quiz, and the quiz is based on this PPT. And once you listen to this PPT, this video, then you need to attempt that quiz. With this note, I thank you once again to listen to me,